talking about Prime Minister making that speech tonight. What else is happening in Westminster? Let's get an update now with our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, fresh out of lobby. Tom, what have they been talking about today?
Yes, I'll tell you what, it was an extraordinarily long session of questioning of the Prime Minister's official spokesman. A lot of government business taking place this week, not least at a little bit later on this evening. The Christmas tree behind me will have its lights turned on by the Prime Minister here in Downing Street. But whilst that might be a relatively light item on his calendar for the next 7 days, there is a lot heavier to come. It's an incredibly busy set of events, meetings and indeed legislation as well. And there is a question out of quite how busy, how much is going on. And that question is there a bit of a reset already taking place in government? The Labour Party has been very conscious about trying to paint the Prime Minister as someone who is weak, as someone who bends with the wind, who's pushed around by different factions within his own party. Well, we might well start to see this week a Prime Minister who wants to be seen as acting a little bit more tough. A little bit later this week, the Home Secretary will be hosting a roundtable in Downing Street with police chiefs, focusing on what more can be done to crack down on the Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil style protesters, where just a very few people can grind roads and indeed other parts of the country to a halt, can vandalise almost at will. What more can be done to crack down on those will be a theme later this week. But also, too, the Prime Minister will of course be addressing those serial rebellions that are taking place, not just on the planning bill, those who want to make it harder to build houses and those who want to make it easier to build wind farms, but also, of course, on the issue of asylum. And the Prime Minister emphasising that this is a priority for him too.
And it's interesting that the 50 names that signed this letter talking about trying to adapt the modern slavery legislation include David Davis and even Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, who we saw announce Rishi Sunak's successors in the leadership vote.
Yes, certainly. This is a letter that has been written by David Davis that the government has said it will look at very closely. The government is saying that this is a priority area and that they do want to explore the options within that letter. They won't commit any more than that. They won't commit to the sort of emergency legislation that is being asked of them. But certainly the idea that someone can come to the United Kingdom, claim they have been people trafficked and then stay in the United Kingdom does seem a curious one. If you have been people trafficked from somewhere against your will, wouldn't you much rather go back to the place from which you came? That seems to be the logic in David Davis's letter, and it wasn't being entirely slapped down by the government today, but clearly some very difficult party management to come, and indeed some huge challenges that will be facing this government in the weeks and months ahead. Also discussed, of course, was this story of perhaps the army being brought in to drive ambulances amidst a winter of strike chaos. Now, the government emphasising no formal request has been made of that by the Health Department for the Ministry of Defence, but departments are able to request army support when it comes to industrial action from the Ministry of Defence, and that's a significant development.
OK, well, we'll watch and wait and see what happens on that. And, of course, suggestions that there may be some problems with power supply tomorrow. But we'll update everyone on that in a moment. For the moment, Tom, thank you for that.